All of a sudden, there's a lot of spy photos of the new Ford Bronco littering the web. Every publication has them. This one is from Motor One. They all look pretty much the same, so the secret is out. Ford has decided to test the new Bronco in public, still under camo. Let's talk about that. So we can definitely confirm that things are heating up a little bit. But aside from that, I decided to get my own spy photographer, and I've beat all these people. I've got a way better image of the new Bronco. Check it out. Oh, that was a cow, not a horse. Hi, my name is Eric, aka the low-budget Jeremy Renner. I make videos about future cars, so let's grow this community together to 100K. I know we can do it. Go ahead and tap the like button to subscribe. Ford has said that the official unveiling is going to be in spring of this year, and there is a source at the Fastlane truck who allegedly says that the unveiling is going to be at the North American International Auto Show. Now, it's in Detroit, and that show was in winter, but I was frozen last year, and so was Elsa. So the inside word is she got the debut moved to the spring. If the Fastlane car is correct, the press days are June 9th and 10th, and often manufacturers like Ford do off-site events like they did with the Mach-E, so I would expect if they're going to unveil it there, it's going to be a couple days before that, probably an off-site event. And the reason I say that is because Ford is clearly ready to show off the camouflaged version of the Bronco. This is the four-door that we're seeing in these spy shots. Now I think you can see the shape pretty clearly. I don't know how much camo they can actually do on a vehicle like this. After all, this is not the Corvette. Let's compare what we're seeing in real life to the renders, this car and driver render, this blue one. The render does look a little bit elongated, but remember what we're looking at with these spy photos is definitely from probably a pretty good distance with a long lens, so we're gonna see perhaps a little bit of shortening in the image. But the overall shape is pretty similar. This 3/4 angle from the rear, you can see the front A pillar has a very similar angle. It's got an upright B pillar, also very similar. And then we get to the rear window, which looks pretty similar too. Now, one thing I noticed that is a difference is the tail lights. So in the render, we've got these 3 tail light treatment, which I guess is a little bit reminiscent of the Mustang, but in a vertical fashion. In the spy photo, we can see what looks to be a single element. One thing I don't think is too accurate in the car and driver renders is the rear window. If you look at the spy photo from the factory, you can see the C pillar, the last one before the rear window. It's at an angle, and it looks like there's going to be a piece of glass which can fit in there, which is not exactly square, sort of a trapezoidal piece. So I think we're going to see a trapezoidal rear window based on this spy photo from inside the Ford plant. So I think that's where car and driver didn't quite get it right. But the basic outline, the basic shape, I think is pretty accurate here. Comparing it to this green 1971, now this is the 2-door, and all the original factory versions of the Broncos were 2 doors. Now we get a 4-door, but if you look at the basic shape, I think it's very similar. I think that's actually really important for Ford to bring back this super iconic shape. It was a little bit lost to me in the late 90s and the last generation. In fact, I made a whole video on it comparing the different generations. You can click on it right over here. Now we're going to get the 2-door and the 4-door. Now the rumor is pretty strong that there's going to be a removable roof. There's a number of patent applications that have been filed which shows a removable roof and removable doors. And looking at the camouflage version out in the field here, you can see there's pretty different camouflage on the body compared to the roof. One thing I think that is very noticeable in this camouflage version is that the front wheels and the rear wheels are pushed really far back and really far forward, and that means it's going to have a low overhang, and that is really ideal for off-roading. You've got a low overhang, you've got a very good angle of approach to get over rocks and difficult terrain. So kudos to Ford for really pushing out the wheelbase as long as possible. Something else that's really noticeable in these spy photos is there's a lot of ground clearance that I can see. Now these are fairly small wheels, but there's a huge amount of wheel gap, and there is definitely a fair bit of clearance from the axle to the surface of the field. Looking at the rear axle, this looks like a solid rear axle in these photos. And one thing that I said before, which I think is now incorrect, is that I thought there might be leaf springs, but now it looks like we have what is probably a trailing arm instead of leaf springs. And that leads me to believe we're going to have a traditional coil and shock type situation in there. Very much like another car that might be called a Wrangler, perhaps. In fact, this does look a whole lot like the Wrangler. Now, the front suspension, there's been some debate over if it's going to be independent or if it's going to be a solid front axle like the Wrangler. However, based on the Bronco R that we saw, this video that Ford put out a couple days ago, that's got an independent front suspension, and I think that's what we're going to get here too. Independent front suspension with very, very long travel. Now, these renders from Bronco 6G, you should definitely go check them out. An awesome site if you want to keep up on the very, very latest Bronco information. I mislabeled the person who created these excellent renders. It is actually Top Recon. Thank you, Top Recon, for putting together these super cool renders. These, of course, are all two-door renders of what Top Recon thinks the Bronco is going to look like. How do you think that these renders compare to what we're seeing out in the field here? I know it's two-door versus four-door. Let me know down in the comments below. And also, do you think that this new Bronco is kind of keeping the proportions of the original Bronco from the 60s through the 70s? Yakima, who makes racks for bikes and snowboards and skis and tents and all that kind of stuff, they have partnered with Ford. So I think that by the time we get to the launch of the Bronco, there's actually going to be some really good dealer installed accessories from Yakima. I'm sure you can buy them yourself too. So that's pretty interesting, and it's really positioning this vehicle as a true off-road vehicle. This is a body on frame. This first Bronco is not going to be unibody. There's talk about a baby Bronco, which might be called the Scout or the Adventurer or something like that. That seems a little bit unclear what that is going to be right now. It's not clear that Ford is going to release them both at the same time. Rumor is that the Scout, the baby Bronco, is going to be 1 to 2 years after this original body on frame that we're going to get soon. If you got any great tips about the Bronco or any other car, definitely hit me up on Instagram. I'm pretty available there. Also, if there's other cars that you want me to cover, comment down below, or also hit me up on Instagram. There's a couple of videos on screen right now if you want to stay informed. Definitely click on one of them. I also want to thank my Patreons. They're right up on screen here too. And I will see you in the next video.